evening. My name is Carolyn Orzak-Schoenberger, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's Immigration Issues Program, sponsored by the Chicago Legal Clinic. And as our guest tonight is Edyta Salata, who's a private attorney very active in the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and we have many things to talk about tonight. But first, I'd like to talk to you about the Chicago Legal Clinic. I'm going to first talk in English, and then I'm going to talk in the Spanish language. So the Chicago Legal Clinic was established in 1982 by two new lawyers who wanted to bring low-cost legal services to South Chicago. South Chicago had been a very active working area of the city because people worked in the steel mills. However, when the steel mills started closing at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, people lost their jobs. They couldn't go out to eat. They couldn't buy things. The local business community suffered, and there was no one who could help people with the myriad of legal problems that took place. Thus, two new lawyers decided to open the South Chicago Legal Clinic for immigrants. However, after they started expanding to other parts of the city, so it became the Chicago Legal Clinic. And the Chicago Legal Clinic today has offices in Pilsen, where I work, Austin, downtown, and several free advice clinics in the courthouse, foreclosures, child support. And finally, there is an office for students at Harold Washington College, where I am a professor. So if you have a problem that concerns domestic violence, immigration, Social Security, disability, if you have a problem involving child support, if you have a problem and want a bankruptcy, please contact the Chicago Legal Clinic between the hours of 9 to 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Please call 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. It's actually on the sign in back of us. In the meantime, if you have a question, we're going to talk about a couple of different topics relating to immigration. Please call us, the number on the screen, 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. And I want to emphasize in English, and we will talk about this, that right now, this is a time when people are scared, which is a time when people are there to make money at the expense of others. So you need to be careful. There's no new law. We don't know if there will be a new law, when there will be new law, or what the new law would be. So anyone who says they do, leave. They are committing fraud. So I'm going to now talk in the Spanish language. Buenas tardes, me llamo Carolina Schoenberger y quiero decirle un poco de la Clínica Legal de Chicago. La Clínica Legal de Chicago fue establecida en 1982 por dos nuevos abogados que querían ayudar a la gente del sur de Chicago. Antes del 1980 había muchas acerías en el sur de Chicago, pero se cerraron las acerías y la gente que trabajaba en las acerías perdieron sus trabajos. También los negocios en el sur de Chicago sufrieron por la falta de clientes. En este barrio no había ninguna oficina legal ofreciendo ayuda legal a bajos costos. Entonces, los dos abogados establecieron la Clínica Legal de Chicago en un solo cuarto. Actualmente hay 4 oficinas de la clínica en el sur de Chicago, Pilsen, donde yo trabajo, Austin y en el centro. También hay varias oficinas en las cortes que ofrecen ayuda legal gratis a la gente con problemas de mantenimiento de los niños, foreclosure, si quería cambiar su nombre. Hay también una oficina en Harold Washington College, en donde soy profesora, que ofrece ayuda legal gratis a los estudiantes. Si tiene un problema con inmigración, violencia doméstica, bienes raíces, seguro social para gente con incapacidades o testamentos, hay que llamar al número central de la clínica legal entre las horas de 9 de la mañana hasta las 5 de la tarde, del lunes a viernes. Llame a 773-731-1762. Está aquí abajo de nuestro nombre. So por favor, llámanos entre las horas de las 9 hasta las 5 de la tarde, el lunes al viernes. Si quería alguien a venir a su iglesia o hablar con gente, podemos hacerlo también. Llame 773-731-1762. Mientras de nuestro programa, si tiene una pregunta, por favor, llame a 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. Y por favor, en esta época de miedo, hay de tener cuidado, porque hay mucha gente que de veras quería recibir dinero cuando otra gente está sufriendo. So, hay personas que aprovechan de esta situación. No hay ninguna nueva ley, no estamos seguros lo que pasaría y por esto hay de tener cuidado en esta época. Bueno, entonces, hablaremos en español, en inglés. We're going to speak now in English, and I want to welcome you back to our program.
Thank you
Welcome
so
back.
much for having me and for having the opportunity to speak about the issues in immigration law.
So I have a lot of students at Harold Washington College who have asked me various questions, and one of them is the future of DACA. And I've told them, as far as I was concerned, there is no future of DACA. What do you think of that?
I would agree with the statement. The Trump administration has formally announced that the program will be terminated as of March 5th of 2018. And I think it's important for everybody who's holding the status to, or has a DACA, has been applied for DACA, who has DACA currently, to educate themselves regarding the status of this program and also to seek options, other alternatives to DACA. For some of the applicants, they might want to consider looking into possibilities of exploring work visas, perhaps looking into diversity visa lottery, and as well as becoming actively involved and reaching out perhaps to a congressman, a local congressman, representative, to voice their concerns over the program and voice their concerns, generally speaking, over the needed reform of immigration law.
And I agree with you. I think of DACA as like a stepchild. That's what I think. That DACA, and we should have immigration reform. We shouldn't settle for DACA because DACA does not bring any status. So, again, I think reaching out to people, particularly outside of the city of Chicago. Our senators are fabulous. They support immigration reform. We're going to talk about that just in a second. But there are congressmen in other parts of Illinois that may be on the fence or may in fact be opposing immigration reform. And I think those are the people that we actually have to reach. So Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Richard Durbin, our senator, have filed a bill to help dreamers. But let's talk about that. What do you think of the bill? What's in the bill?
Well, so basically in the bill, there are provisions which would provide a path for DACA recipients to become permanent residents and find their path to citizenship. It's not a comprehensive reform, however, it will provide them with options. So I would still encourage DACA recipients to contact the representative, the congressman, and voice their support of Dreamers and Dreamer Act, just to ensure the continuity. You know, you have a large group of people who, you know, came here when they were really young, who then many times went through college without any type of scholarship, who funded businesses. And I think it will be a great loss if this program is terminated, if their work authorizations are being revoked, and if the employers would also lose this part of the workforce.
Well, again, it seems this is a real divisive issue, but it's one that does need to be resolved because we have over 10 million people who are in undocumented status, and they wouldn't be here if we didn't. Some people just don't appear. So we had to have done something to encourage them to come. So again, I think you're correct. What do you think what is the diversity visa? Because that's something that people who are not in Mexico, India, China can take advantage of. What is the diversity visa?
Correct. So diversity visa is a program, it's a visa lottery for countries where you don't really have that much immigration when you look at the numbers. And that program allows applicants to enter a very quick survey application online, and then if they're lucky, they would be qualified for an immigrant visa. I guess the program itself has always been a little bit controversial in terms of what it exactly promotes or encourages. However, it is an option I always, whenever I talk to my clients during my interviews and when we are running out of options, this is also always sort of a fallback for me to see if that country, where the client is from, are they on the list, and if so, maybe we can file this application during that one particular period of time. And actually, the visa lottery now is open, the application is open.
So apply now, right?
Apply now if your country falls, but there's a list where the countries are being basically referenced. Again, those countries represent countries where you don't have large numbers of immigrants, so Mexico would not qualify, for example. I would also want to note that it's really important to make sure that if that application is being filled out online, to use the governmental website and not to fall a victim of websites which are being created as sort of a knockoff website that would trap you into filling out application and paying them for that service. The application, the online application is free, so you shouldn't be paying any money to anyone when the application is being submitted. If you go to the website, and sometimes it's difficult to sort of figure out, is it the Department of State website or is it something else? If you are forced to make any kind of payments, then you know that you're on the wrong site.
I think that's a great point. Well, I should have imagined that, again, if there's something there, someone's going to try to figure out how to make a dishonest buck. So President Trump has talked about doing away with the diversity visa. Can he, just like he did with DACA, just do a signature, or does he have to take other steps?
Well, I think that in this particular case, I would say it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to a political situation. And, my understanding is that, he can't really, just cancel the program. But
This was a law, though. Didn't Congress pass
correct,
a law?
correct.
So he has to go back to Congress then, doesn't he?
Correct. So again, I would, and again, the origin of the program is, I don't really know if diversity visa would necessarily, the existence of it would fix the program problems, particularly considering the fact that it doesn't address the needs of the biggest majority of people from countries where we have the largest number of immigrants, right? So I think that really, I don't really think that anything's going to happen to DACA. Like you said, that it was a legislative
diversity
action.
visa. Yeah.
So, but it was just a political statement that he wanted to make to cater to the particular situation that was developing at the
So
time.
that leads to another issue, which I don't completely understand. What is meant by extreme vetting? That somehow extreme vetting would stop people who want to hurt us from coming into the country. What is extreme vetting? I hear that phrase, but I have yet to see it defined.
Right, and I think that's the biggest problem with extreme vetting, that nobody really knows what it means or what it's supposed to mean. And we know that it will definitely allow, under this umbrella or the term, there were steps taken to allow governmental agencies and agents to surveil social media, even accounts that belong to U.S. citizens who are naturalized citizens can be monitored. So I think it definitely means that your Facebook account or your Twitter account now is open.
I don't see
in a way
how they can do that to someone who is a lawful permanent resident, a citizen, even a naturalized citizen. I thought that there was a Supreme Court case where you actually had to get a warrant.
Right, and I'm sure there will be plenty of litigation that will, depending on how this unravels, in violation of constitutional rights. But
That's not gonna stop them, is what you're saying, they're just gonna go ahead and do it.
I would think so. And I think that particularly if you are dealing with situation in terms of consular processing, right? If you have a person that doesn't have a status, not a permanent resident, not a U.S. citizen, but is an applicant, I think it would be important in preparation for that interview to discuss the social media activities of the applicant prior to the interview to identify potential problems. And we don't really know what extreme vetting is going to mean. I guess we'll learn as the cases go through consulates. I think most definitely that we can expect to see more questions in terms of exploring a longer period of time preceding the application date in terms of travel history, in terms of work history. Any type of association activities in different type of organization will have to be discussed in greater detail.
So we were talking outside about people who want to go into interviews, either, lawyers can't go to the consulates, but we can go when there's a citizenship interview or if someone is getting their visa here. And why do you think it's good for a lawyer to attend with a client or to prepare a client because lawyers can't go to the consulate? What are some of the reasons that it's a good thing to be prepared?
So regardless of the concept of extreme vetting and how it's going to implement it, I think that in my own practice, most of the times I would accompany my clients to the interviews because the case, we will make a submission, let's say it's a application for adjustment of status. We have an immigrant who is married to a citizen, and we've compiled the file, prepared all the documentation. The officer will not really review this case prior to the interview most of the times. They will look at it while the applicant is sitting in front of them. So if there is any type of issue, if there is a problem, this is when this is going to come up to the surface. So if you don't have that representation, you don't have someone that you can fall back on and who sort of can understand where the officer is going with those questions and what those questions mean in terms of your viability of your case, I think you are losing out on effective representation. And it's important to screen the case, obviously, before we get to the point of interview to make sure that this case is viable. So this is why I presume everyone who's retaining services of an attorney, this is what they are really paying for. But if there is a problem, if there is a confusion, if there is a mistake or some kind of mix-up, we want to have an attorney with you at the interview to address the situation as it's developing. It's very difficult sometimes when I have a client who, for example, did not retain an attorney and comes back for a consultation and tries to basically explain the situation. It's very difficult to figure out because there's really no record of that, of what transpired at the interview.
Especially now where things are taking so long that someone may have decided to do something themselves and it doesn't become an issue until a year later, and all of a sudden files may be merged or mixed up with someone else. And having an attorney, it's like, I think it's like childbirth. Most of the time you don't need a doctor. Baby will come, mom will be okay, baby will be great. But sometimes you need a doctor and you don't always know when you're going to need a doctor. So spend the extra money. It's not a huge amount of money, but I think it's worthwhile to do it. And again, going to the consulate where attorneys are not allowed, I think it's really critical to be prepared and have a lawyer look over the forms to see if anything is going on. And we were also talking outside about the fact that sometimes someone forgot to tell the lawyer something. And you've had cases, we were talking about it, where someone forgot to tell the lawyer.
Right, and it's I think it's good to have that moment of realization that I have forgotten to, to remember before application is filed. Under the old administration, I think we had more of an option of pooling an application. So let's say if I have discovered that there was a problem with it, I could have just written a letter saying we would like to revoke this application. We don't want to pursue it anymore, withdraw it. But particularly right now with enforcement priority issues and so on. It's really important that you try to remember as much as possible before that application is being filed to ensure that in the process of attempting to obtain permanent residency, for example, that you don't accidentally end up in a removal court. And so it's definitely good to remember earlier, and I hate when it happens, let's say, a day prior to the interview, where when we then are scrambling,
I
trying
forgot to
figure
tell
out.
you, I'll never forget someone going into the interview who came over and on a student visa to go to high school, and you have to show that you're not gonna go to a public school, but he went to a public school anyway, and as we're going in, he said, I'm worried, and then said, this is why, and I said, no, you didn't tell me. He said, oh, I didn't tell you, my grandfather bribed someone at a private school to give a letter, and I said, no, I would have remembered that. So, again, if you go to a lawyer, you have to tell the lawyer everything, not selectively, because if it comes up, the lawyer can't help you if you've lied. So it's a critical thing. So as we start to wrap up, right now, there's a lot of fear and people are afraid even to go to school, send their kids to school or go to church. I understand that some colleges students are withdrawing. And when you live in a time of terror, you can't let terror win. I mean, what advice would you give to people who are afraid based on all the rhetoric that is going on out there?
I think my advice would be to get involved in community organization, to find a group of people who are in the same situation, because then you know that you're not alone and there's a large number of people just like you, and your voice can be heard if you get involved, and I assume that it will make an impact down the road.
I think that it's important. I think it's important to go out. I know there are a lot of Know Your Rights seminars going that tell people you have the right to remain silent, which you do. But I think a more important right is not, if you are detained, ask to see a judge and don't sign anything. I think that is the big thing. People feel pushed into signing something, and you don't. Especially if you have a family here, you may very well have a defense that will work in court. And I think we've been lucky to have very good judges here that, again, people need to be careful. And anyone who says, now I know someone, I can get you a visa, there's no harm in getting a second opinion. And because there are a lot of people out there, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, in English as well as in Spanish, that there are people out there that are looking to make a buck, and if they can make it now when people are vulnerable, they're going to do it. So any last words as we go into the finish?
I definitely think that anyone who is undocumented should seek consultation with a qualified attorney. If you just to explore options, make sure that there's no hidden claims to naturalization through citizenship, some kind of derivative citizenship, so on and so forth, to know that maybe you have a fallback option if things go wrong. And if you do seek guidance from someone, make sure that you research this person, that you know that they are attorneys, that they are licensed, that you don't go to an attorney that either charges too much or too little, but somewhere down in the middle, to make sure that you don't fall a victim of any type of fraud.
I think that's very important because it's easier to protect yourself up front than to have to deal with it after. But if you are a victim of fraud, again, if you contact the Chicago Legal Clinic, 773-731-1762, we will go through what the various options are to try to correct your problem, or if not, to try to seek justice. So Edyta, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's nice to see you. And look forward to some time in the new year doing another show. Hopefully we'll have some good news to get out there instead of some bad news. In the meantime, if you need advice, the Chicago Legal Clinic is ready, willing, and able to provide it, not only immigration, but also real estate and other issues. Call the number. Be careful out there. I keep telling people, no haga nada tonta, don't do anything stupid right now. This is the time not to be terrorized, but certainly to be careful. Thank you so much and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.